everyone, welcome back to Things We Read This Week. I'm Jordan Nanos, joined again by Hunter Almgren, and we are back. We got a big show. We're going to talk about vibe coding, about MCP, about AI taking jobs, and about DeepSeek. So picking up right where we left off, just I think 3 months of progress on all the same topics. Uh,
Yeah, 3 months of progress and 3 months of I don't know. The
Sunshine, spring is
yeah,
sprung,
yeah.
uh,
Well,
depending where you are.
I was gonna say 3 months of AI companies getting exposed to scams and going bankrupt.
I guess the glass is half empty for you, yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, no, I mean it's just funny. It's just funny because the whole builder AI story like that I've been following and like what's actually happened with that. It's like real human beings trying to mimic LLM responses in their responses to end user prompts. And it's like
API driven, man. It's API driven.
I couldn't believe it. Like, wait,
For those in the
so
audience, API stands for a person in India for some of these companies.
exactly. Exactly. And it's
Yeah.
it's just funny to me because like this whole time everybody in like the creative community is trying to not be like AI and not have their work flagged as AI generated. And then on the other side of it, you have people running entire companies of people who are trying to mimic AI because they don't have the money to actually build the AI systems that they're promising to deliver. It's hilarious.
Yeah, well, and it's funny. I mean, I just see this looking at LinkedIn or Twitter or even people's blog posts on Medium or emails that you get, whatever. The flag for me of people using AI with the dash, the long
Mhm.
dash to break things up instead of parentheses or a new line character or something like that, or a comma, is just, it's such a tell that
Mhm.
somebody is using AI, specifically ChatGPT seems to, that dash seems to be its favorite.
Seems to
So,
be guilty of that a lot.
yeah, but I think a lot of people are, you know, this is, I mean, I don't know if I would call blog posts an art, but with a lot of art, you end up being a curator with good taste or a director trying to compose something with the AI kind of doing the work for you. And it creates a lot of, it's just a lot more content, some slop, some good stuff.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm personally kind of cognizant of like losing my ability to write English or code the more that I vibe it out. But
The more that you rely on these tools.
yeah, but like I, went on a trip, like a holiday vacation, and the amount that I was able to like compose stuff together by just asking questions and kind of learn about the history of places or
Mhm.
like local cuisine or language or things like that in real time with an assistant that's an expert in that relative to me was pretty awesome. And like maybe okay, I learned, you lose something because you're not talking to a local, but it's better than nothing at all, certainly for me.
Well, and I think that's like a statement too about even like the use of um like augmented reality. Like when I was in Spain, one of the people in our group had the Meta Ray-Bans
Yeah.
and was like telling me about like, oh yeah, like I can just like look at this sign that's written in Spanish and it translates it for me. I'm like, that's cool, right? Because if you're somewhere you have no idea where you are and everything's in a language that you don't speak, like the ability to just like look at something and go, okay, yeah, I understand what that is telling me, or like where I am, right? Like that's really cool. Or like look at menus and have them translated for you.
Yeah, with the glasses, I didn't even consider that. I was using my phone in Japan and
Hmm.
it's like such a, it really helps with vending machines and stuff, but sometimes it doesn't help. Like you'll translate it, and I'll be looking at it, I'll be going Muscat grape. Like, okay, now I gotta Google what that is.
Yeah, like it tells
I
you
can
the
see it's a
English
grape
trans.
from the picture. What exactly is a Muscat grape, guys?
Yeah.
Uh, anyway, let's get into it. So, yeah, speaking of vibing it out, I don't know, where do you want to start with some comments from powerful AI people, I guess?
Yeah, so it's there was an interesting interview with the CEO of Anthropic where he basically said AI could wipe out half of all entry-level white-collar jobs and spike unemployment to 10 to 20% in the next 1 to 5 years. He's basically saying that um, there's going to be some sort of like job apocalypse that happens where um, the role of a junior developer or a junior salesperson or a junior what accountant or whatever like
Yeah,
just ceases to exist. Um, and it kind of goes along the lines of like what Mark Zuckerberg said at the Meta Llama conference about how they're going to replace a bunch of their junior developers with AI coders that can basically just, work a full 8 hour day, just plugging away, doing commits and whatever. But um, I think what was really interesting about this interview was that, Dario is essentially calling for some sort of like token tax as an example that can maybe, I don't know, fund some sort of social program for people that are displaced. And, if you look at one of the last like US presidential like campaigns, like that's something that Andrew Yang talked about a lot,
yeah,
right? Is he was talking about like, hey, AI is coming, they took our jobs, like from South Park, like it's coming, and we need some sort of like UBI strategy to help those displaced. But I don't know, like part of me wants to think like, okay, that's just like another AI doomer, like, telling us about the end of days. But on the flip side, this is coming from somebody who's enabling the doom that he's talking about, right? So it's like, what? There's two sides of that equation that are very interesting because of who is saying it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I can never get past the aspect of like talking your book when I hear about this from the guys that are having, spending their day meeting with the researchers that work for them and getting the latest updates. So surely they know more about this than me on
Hmm.
the technical side, but then going and meeting with the press and then going and meeting with investors. And you have to imagine that there's a through line there where something that he sees when he talks to the researchers, he shares with the press in the context of, oh my gosh, there's going to be unemployment. This is going to be impactful. Watch out for the wave that's coming. If it's not already here in some pretty measurable ways, I would say. And then go talk to investors and say, look how valuable we are when we're one of the 5 places in the world that's going to be benefiting from the automation of all of these jobs and all of the people using it. So I think there's an aspect of it, talking his book. I also think that error bars are kind of interesting. Like typically it's up to half of these, jobs are going away. So you got big error bars there. And then you've got in the next 1 to 5 years, that's a huge amount of time. There's a
Hmm.
entire presidential term in there in the US, right? Um, and then there's like, I think he also says 10 to 20% of all jobs or all white collar jobs or something like that. So if you look at the bottom of it, in one respect, the forecasts seem ridiculous. Like, uh, let's say you have automation of exactly half of all entry level jobs in the next year. That seems like a crazy estimate to me, right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, if you have 10% change in all entry level white collar jobs, or just all white collar jobs in total over the next 5 years, that seems like very reasonable to me and pretty comparable to other transformations like COVID and work from home, or like
Yeah.
the internet bubble and, boom and bust,
Hmm.
where if you think about it, the internet was an incredibly transformative technology. It lets people build companies all around the world. You can employ people in different countries. You can do all of these different things that you couldn't do before, sell stuff online, contact people quickly, real-time updates to product availability, marketing, like there's all sorts of changes. And the economy was kind of resilient. There wasn't an entire massive social change, but there, on the span of 20 years, there's gradually been a big change that Andrew Yang pointed out, where manufacturing, like Detroit was the biggest city in the US for a while, and now there's
Yeah.
not a lot of people with jobs there,
Yep.
especially in the internet. So I don't know if you can look at all the political and economic implications, and I can like really hypothesize about where that's actually going to go. I think the more interesting thing is to look at the technology. Dario's got access to stuff that we don't, sees next generation models, next
Right.
generation model experiences, feedback from people who are using Claude for code. And I think he's clearly talking about a radically better product coming soon.
Well, and even like I would say like how much more radically better can it get when even the current, what is it, Opus 4 model can basically sit there and code by itself for 7 hours straight without any human intervention? How much more do we need to get? I mean,
Yeah,
are we are we
yeah.
shooting for like 24-hour coding cycles where you just have these agents churning out code while everyone else is sleeping, and then when everybody wakes up in the morning, they review what that agent wrote?
Yeah, I mean, it's partially it's the like curation thing I was just talking about earlier that
Mhm.
I've been doing in my daily life, which is you see the same thing here, and I can talk about it in terms of how I develop applications. Like it's there's always a like back and forth that happens between the user community or the product team who wants to define some features that they want to see in the application, and then the actual agent that's going to go code. The software engineer, the developer, is going to go implement it. Um, the implementation is pretty like really good right now if you can steer it and say, yeah, that feature's good, that feature's bad, or whatever. What's kind of missing, or has been missing, is the uh, language model with the vision to kind of look at an application, work through it with computer control, and like give feedback.
Yeah.
But the middle piece of translating a feature that the person wants to see into a long product requirements document that then gets fed into an agent that's going to go develop the code, like that exists right now, and it's really good. So,
Yeah.
um,
I think based on what I've seen too, like just in my own experience, another thing that's missing is like UI UX. Like the current models don't seem to be very good at that because they don't understand design aesthetic very
yeah,
well. And
yeah,
so like a lot of like the React JS interfaces that I've generated on my own just to see what the capabilities are, even giving it guidelines of like, hey, make it look like this or that. At the end of the day, what gets spit out is it looks like an engineer designed a UI, right? It's
yeah.
not pretty. It's very basic. It like is functional only. And so I don't know that I mean, maybe we will, but like I don't know that we're going to get to the point of like Apple level UI design anytime soon with something that's generated from an LLM.
Yeah, I mean, I've got my doubts. I think there's it's really dependent on the model. Like what
Mhm.
the models that have vision, in my experience, they're big and they're expensive, but like you can take a screenshot of a UI and it will replicate it pretty closely.
Yeah.
Um, and if you're saying, oh, this like the thing that stands in the way of the model being able to automate away an entire entry level software engineer's job is some aesthetic aspects of the UI. Like, well, that kind of settles the argument. Like that guy, that person's not getting hired, in my view. I mean, sorry. Um,
Yeah, what's interesting about it too is that, I was reading this on TechCrunch, a few days ago
well,
that
yeah, it's already happening.
yeah, they're this VC firm Signal Fire is basically saying that at least in the startup communities, it's already happening, right? So like they're and you've seen news articles about like, what was it, Klarna replacing half of their engineers already, and like there are other people doing this, I think, in the startup space. I don't know that the larger the company, it seems like the less it's happening at this point in time because they're typically taking a more cautious or conservative approach to doing that. I mean, I'm not saying it's not happening, but I'm just saying it's happening a lot less
Yeah.
the larger and more quote unquote legacy of a company you go, right? I mean, if you're a startup um, like a Klarna or like Codium, is another good example of like, yeah, I can create an entire company with a $500 LLC and a couple LLMs. And I can go pitch that to people by hiring like basically one guy for marketing, one guy for, handful of people for engineering to oversee product development. I can basically keep the circle small. My max company size is maybe 20 people, but I can generate millions of dollars in revenue very easily, right?
Yeah.
So you do see that a lot in the startup space, but for somebody like a Microsoft or like a Meta is a great example. Like that's a pretty bold claim to me, right? Meta being as large of a company as they are, saying that like we're just gonna cut the bottom half of our development staff in the next couple years and replace it with AI. Like that's pretty bold.
Yeah. I mean, so it's interesting because I don't know if they're saying exactly that. A lot of the big companies are saying they're going to stop hiring or shrink hiring, or they're going to
Mm-hmm.
let, people who leave, they're not going to backfill them. And fair enough, right? They're the biggest companies in the world. They are, uh, the consultants and their executives probably all say, let's pursue efficiency right now.
Mm-hmm.
And fair enough, that's a strategy you can take through AI. But the one that seems to be winning to me to create a whole bunch of enterprise value is pursuing higher quality in products and services that you're providing, which inherently means growing, like
Yeah.
getting bigger, doing more, doing better work, winning versus the competition, that sort of stuff. And I even though it seems possible on the face of it, I think the cultural difference of, cutting and shrinking and being efficient really flies in the face of growing and improving quality and doing more. So startups, I mean, it just seems like that's the thing to pursue right now. Just go bigger, do more, higher quality,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll be rewarded thanks to the tools of AI. Uh, like, yeah, okay, maybe a single person can create a multi-million dollar company that, couldn't have in the past because AI is just making them so much more productive. But, the multi-billion dollar companies like Codium that sold to OpenAI, for example, like a couple of years after if it was founded, it's not a single person because they
Right.
just moving faster, doing higher quality work and growing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, interesting stuff, man.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good segue. Speaking of coding, a good segue into I was cracking up at this headline. Vibe coding, shipping features or shipping vulnerabilities. Um,
Yeah,
I mean,
this is funny, man. So
it is.
I'm possibly seeing the ChatGPT Dash in that blog. I think the for the boomers, what is vibe coding? Like I'm seeing a prompt of be a little bit controversial coming in here. But I don't know. I totally like, agree with the whatever the concept in this shipping features or shipping vulnerabilities. Like, uh, yeah, blind trust in AI suggestions. This is like, this is actively happening in my life without thinking about it right now.
Yeah. Well, and I think, there have been some examples that I've seen on X and other places of, um, hey, like I used Anthropic's latest model to refactor an application that I wrote 10 years ago, and it actually did a really good job and made a lot of really good suggestions and optimizations, but it also wrote 9 known CVE exploits like Sev 9 plus into my code that wasn't there before. So
Yeah. So I'm with you here. I do think it's a problem. I think this is a little bit of sour grapes from people who are getting their job automated away, like in live
mhm,
time by younger people who shouldn't know much about this. Kind of the the rock band drummer who's saying like, oh, that's not real music because you're using a electronic like
drum
drum pad
machine.
or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
But so it's a total problem. But to me, I mean, the back and forth of having a model inspect your code, identify security exploits, explain ways in which this could be an issue, write tests, do all of this stuff. To me, like it's an attitude or a prioritization issue with the developer, more so than it is a problem with using the models. Like somebody who's lazy and programming is going to have security exploits, whether they're using a model or not. And
Right.
somebody who's lazy and doesn't consider security when they're using a model, maybe they create a lot more security exploits, more obvious, a lot faster. But the result is going to be the same, which is that, hey, you have an issue. Um, and
So are
I would
you
hope that I would hope people vibe coding would use the model still to consider security as part of their development process.
so are
And
you
it's
talking about vibing DevSecOps now? Like, is that the next evolution of vibe coding? Like
yeah, yeah, vibe sack, man.
vibe
Yeah.
sec, dude. I can imagine if any security like people are listening to this, just literally sweating and having a heart attack over the concept of vibing, code security. But I think, I guess where my head's at is like Spectre, Meltdown, like those like memory vulnerabilities, like really exposed like a lack of people doing like writing memory protection into code, right? So like, C, for example, like it's very good at writing protected memory spaces for routines, but you have to know how to do it.
Yeah.
And it's not easy, right? And as you go further up the stack to higher level languages like Objective C, like Python, like Rust, it gets even harder, right? To
Rust easier, but yeah, yeah, I get what you're saying.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like the higher up you go, the harder it is to write those protections into the code because you're so abstracted from the underlying operating system functions or CPU functions or whatever. Um, and I'm not saying that every application needs that, but like I do agree with you that anybody who is like doing vibe coding, I guess, like should really be thinking about security because otherwise, like I might just pivot and become a black hat and just start, stealing crypto from everybody with the way that vibe coding is going. Like, like why not?
Come on,
Why
man.
not?
We got transcripts going on here. You're
It's
gonna make me
vulnerable.
cut this part of the episode out? Come on.
Nah, no, no, no. It's a joke meant to illustrate that like
Yeah, yeah.
as a cyber criminal, my job is potentially getting easier with like the
as a theoretical cyber criminal for those
Yes.
listening, not a be, be
But like,
explicit about this.
yes, as a theoretical cyber criminal, my job is getting infinitely easier because, like, I don't know, like, when was the last time you've heard of anybody getting exploited with a SQL injection? Like, I'm pretty sure everybody closed that gap many years ago, but are we reopening it by not taking a lens on cybersecurity as we're using LLMs to generate and optimize code?
Yeah, so so yes, the landscape of security vulnerabilities is absolutely massive, growing over time as people get lazier and use these tools. Let's provide an example. MCP, so Model Context Protocol, originally developed by Anthropic, adopted by all the other major labs. Take your existing application and instead of having a generic REST API, have a protocol that the language model is, more easily able to use and adopt for agent-based workflows. What does this mean? Well, specifically, let's look at GitHub. The official MCP server for GitHub has an API, but it also now has an MCP server, is going to grant an LLM a whole host of new abilities, like being able to read and create issues in repositories that the user has access to, and then submit new PRs. So, like the LLM can work on your behalf inside a GitHub repo.
Mhm.
However, Simon Willison, awesome guy, he describes this as a lethal trifecta for prompt injection. It can access private data. It has exposure to malicious instructions like delete your repo, like
Mhm.
delete a branch, and
Sudo
the ability to
rm-rf.
and the ability to remove the French package and the
Yeah.
ability to exfiltrate information. So, um, what does this mean? Well, like, yeah, exactly as you're saying a opening up applications like GitHub, like your OneDrive, like your Google, like your G Suite of applications,
Mhm.
like Salesforce, like everything that you know, what's that company? Zapier has access to these like automated workflow sort of things. I
Mhm.
mean, this is a it's just a massive amount of exposure that you're adopting if you're wanting to simplify things by using an LLM. So exactly like what we're saying, except now it's not just your well, it is your private repo for your private applications, kind of exactly what we're saying right now. You're the
Mhm.
single person with a vibe coding, and if you're deciding to use the MCP server instead of just like have the LLM punch into your VS Code, and then you as the user run git commit git push. If
Yeah.
the model's doing that for you, now all of a sudden this thing can take actions that you're not approving. The human's not in the loop. You're open to a whole bunch of new exploits.
Yeah.
Um,
I think though, on a positive note, regarding MCP just in general, like I really feel that MCP is AI's REST API moment.
yeah,
Like where all of the sudden now we have a common framework for disparate things to talk to each other, and we're not having to like write custom integrations every single time we need something to function. Like I remember, being a data center administrator 15 years ago, pre REST API, and like, okay, like I want to build a private cloud. Okay, well, I have HPE servers and I have NetApp storage and I have Cisco switches, and none of them talk to each other.
yeah,
Great. How is my automation going to work? Right? How do I enable self-service catalogs? How do I do all that? And like back then, yeah, like it sucked. That's why, you had so many people basically fail at building a private cloud. But then the Redfish consortium came along with this whole concept of REST APIs, and over time, more and more data center vendors like built REST APIs into their product. It's a common data model. It's a common access model, so that like if I can write one Terraform build plan or one Ansible playbook, and it can execute across all three disparate stacks. That's awesome. I feel like MCP is going to get there, but one of the big things for me that's missing, so like like the REST API has a a data model security, like a data security model built into it, right? Like
Yeah.
built into the implementation spec. I think that for these types of vulnerabilities to go away, MCP as a protocol needs to also have that sort of like data security model embedded into the implementation so that like, okay, now I can actually trust this to take these actions and know that I'm not exposing myself to some sort of like prompt injection attack or like, some sort of like malicious like man in the middle attack on the MCP server where I'm like intercepting the communication between two LLM agents.
Yeah, so it's interesting, man. I think the protocol does a good job of doing this at this point. The
Hmm.
problem is that continues to happen with all LLMs is prompt injection.
Hmm.
So you it's not the thing with a REST API is it's deterministic. You run a command, you know what's executing. With an
Yep.
LLM, you send in a prompt. You actually have no deterministic way of knowing what that model is going to do because every time the prompt's different, right? It's got some
Hmm.
different context in it. It's got some different, instructions. Like it's got something specific to the user. Otherwise, we're just making an API call, right? And
Right.
so, the idea of like an application calling an API, like, you know, uh, the windsurf editor from Codium calling the GitHub API when a user clicks somewhere or, when some conditional happens, makes sense. But the thing that's different is the model is making the decision in some
Right.
chain of thought to actually use that tool. And so, like Simon has a good way of describing it here. He was concerned about the three ingredients all being present in a workflow. So, like
Hmm.
one MCP server would let you have access to private data. A second MCP server would have exposure to malicious instructions inside that server. That change the behavior of the
Yeah.
model when it gets it back. The third one has the ability to exfiltrate information and like, the model provides some information to it, and suddenly the attacker is able to get it out of there. Uh, he summarizes it saying, well, it's not actually three different MCP servers. It's all present in GitHub because,
Yeah.
like, it's got your private code you don't want people to see. It's got the ability for somebody to inject some
To
malicious
host malicious
instructions.
code. Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's got the ability for the user who gets a commit uploaded to their side to exfiltrate information. It's crazy. So, and I think the big thing about this is that like the cat and mouse game, we're going to need some really smart security researchers to figure this out because I have no idea how you put the guardrails around an LLM to have it be identifying malicious instructions inside of other Git repos. Like when a when a
Yeah.
when a new company releases a new model, like we'll talk about DeepSeek's new release here, or Anthropic came out with Claude and Opus and Sonnet 4 or O3 or something. It's like a matter of 4 hours before people are posting the system prompt online because they've got the right prompt injection attack that
Yep.
can get it out, right? And you just keep rolling. Like there's you know
Yep.
um anyway, it's kind of like one of those things in the uh in the data center business where if a malicious actor has physical access to your hardware, count it compromised, sort of thing, right? Like we've just never been able to make a hardware system that's completely resilient to somebody who has physical access and can do stuff to it, plug something in. And to
Right.
me, if an LLM has access to it, it's a something as part of an agent workflow, I'd consider it compromised. Like you have to be comfortable with that private data being exposed.
And if you're not, you don't use it, right? Or at least until like, you know, your comment about the security researcher thing is interesting because I'm actually closely watching that space and I've like had a couple conversations with like CrowdStrike around like the direction that they're moving into like
Yeah.
model security and stuff like that. And it's like to me it's a super interesting space to watch because I don't know how much like conventional security ways of thinking you can really apply to this. Like it's almost like we need like a novel security concept that is specific to AI that doesn't apply conventional wisdom in the security space, right? Like we that's what I'm really watching right now is like how do all of these like very prominent security companies that have like entire divisions of research labs that employ extremely smart people that like all day they're trying to find either new vulnerabilities or new ways of securing things, like how are they looking at this? That's kind of what I'm watching.
Yeah, everything I've seen so far seems to say that because it's not deterministic,
Hmm.
uh, and because it's AI or an LLM, and there's not a human in the loop, the only way to kind of identify these issues is with AI, is with classification models, is
Yeah.
with other LLMs, because how do I figure out if a malicious prompt is, if I'm seeing a malicious prompt? Probably need a model to review it. Um, because there's really no way to write deterministic code and say, hash the stuff in there, and if it matches, you know, known prompt injection attack, like do that, or some fine tuning, workflow at the end of training where you're gonna fine tune the model to reject certain prompt injection attacks. So, like this cat and mouse game is just never going to be able to catch up with all of these attacks.
The
Um,
other the other question that I just thought of too is like just thinking about this. There are certain aspects of this that I feel could be potentially easy to prevent, like um, MCP server A communicating with MCP server B that's malicious. Well, an easy way to stop that would be to just use something like X509 certificates where MCP server A has to verify with MCP server B that it's a trusted resource. If the handshake is there, proceed. If it's not, task failed,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like there's certain aspects of this I feel like we already have the technology today to fix. The prompt injection stuff, yeah, I'm right there with you. Like I don't think that we have a great answer for that right now.
yeah, yeah. So, um, here we go. Uh, Let me just share something I was remembering. I can't find the exact announcement on Anthropic's website, but they had a 6 level classifier program where they offered a bounty if you were able to find a universal jailbreak on their
Hmm.
system. And I think it was about a day in, and most people got stopped after about the 3rd level. But what do you find down here? Live demo results, key findings. Yeah, here we go.
Oh, okay.
Number of users who passed the challenge at each level. So
Hmm.
339 users were able to pass Q1. There's 4 users who were able to pass all of the 8 levels of classifiers that they were using in order to protect against prompt injection attacks. And so therefore they awarded a $20,000 cash prize uh, to the first person to pass all 8 levels, and they paid a total of $55,000 out there to Altenbeck Ismailov, somebody named Hunter. So yeah, I mean, like, I think this was live for like 5 days.
Okay.
This is the probably the premier, certainly one of the premier model companies and the premier company in terms of at least talking about AI safety. They
Hmm.
certainly have the most people working on it, and they certainly have the most public products that seem to announced they're serious about it with constitutional AI and everything. And like 5 days in, four people publicly announced that they've gotten through the biggest,
The
8 levels
hardest,
of
yeah.
moats and drawbridges and portcullis and whatever you can keep people out with. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah. Anyway, it's pretty revealing. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, wrap up by talking about DeepSeek. Teased that a
Yeah.
bit earlier.
Yeah, man. DeepSeek's always a good topic.
So, update from these guys. This one certainly is a little less world changing and ground shaking than the one from January and December, V3 and R1. What they did with this release is update R1. Um,
With new weights.
yeah, new weights, same architecture, and new benchmark results. So you can see here on screen the benchmark results as we compare R1 May 28th to R1, with the blue and the white stripes here for those watching, and then R1 with the light blue at the very right side. Significant improvements across all of these benches. Live Code Bench and Aider are the ones that I view most closely because they most closely relate to my like coding development workflow.
Vibe coding
Um,
development workflow.
yeah, edit stuff in in there. But the other ones, I mean, huge improvements across the board. Uh, and I just want to point out something that I think I commented on this in December when they released V3.
Hmm.
And obviously, I think people have gotten enough, like DeepSeek has gotten enough recognition about the uh, aspects of reinforcement learning that improve the model's, performance so significantly with so little compute, um, and just the amount of improvement that the thinking tokens, like the reasoning, can have on this stuff. But the thing that still shocks me is that this is the biggest model released by a factor of three. And both DeepSeek and Quen are Chinese models. So the biggest, you know, other model that's out there is Llama 4 Maverick or Llama 3.1 405B, which is okay. I guess it's um, DeepSeek is 50% bigger, but it's an MOE. So anyway, the point is that this is by far the biggest model that's open source,
Yeah.
and you can kind of see the benefits of having that many parameters over time when you just let the training run keep ripping and add more data. Um, and they've got some sort of a flywheel in here where the more data that they get from users, the more labels that they can generate, the more synthetic data that they can generate, the better this gets. The last thing that I'll leave you with, this is a bit of speculation, but uh, somebody on X says, if you're wondering why the new DeepSeek R1 sounds a bit different, I think they probably switched from training on synthetic OpenAI to synthetic Gemini outputs. You can see kind of in the
Interesting.
classifications that they use here.
Yeah.
Uh, they're very different, and it's very close to Gemini models in terms of the creative writing, quote unquote,
Hmm.
slot profile that this guy is using to identify.
Slop profile. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's an interesting rank, but basically, like it identifies the top tokens or words or bigrams, like multiple words that the model's using, and it's an easy way to identify similarity or like semantic similarity between this model's output going to others. So
Hmm.
yeah, Gemini passing OpenAI on the um, uh, Ella Marina leaderboard um, could lead to more people using the API, including other labs, to generate synthetic data for the RL creative writing capabilities here, which is not covered in a lot of detail in their papers. So, yeah,
Yeah.
interesting stuff.
Very interesting. Well, I think that's about at time, sir. It's good to be back, man. We'll have to get back to the weekly cadence, or at least bi-weekly.
Every week, if we feel like it.
Every week if we feel like it, or we're not on a plane somewhere. Although I will say, and I think I had mentioned this a while back, but like I'm a big United Airlines guy. With United getting Starlink by the end of this year into next year, who knows? I might be doing episodes from, seat 10C and Economy Plus. We don't know.
We'll need some good noise canceling headphones on there, buddy. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
All
All right.
right. Take care, everyone.
You
Bye.